Sevgili misafirler, 9. İstanbul Finans Zirvesi devam ediyor ve şimdi de yurt dışından bir misafirimizi ağırlayacağız. Öncelikle bir hatırlatma yapalım, bir bilgi verelim sizlere. Biliyorsunuz İngiltere eski bakanı ve İngiltere'nin ilk Müslüman bakanı Şadid Rafik Malik bizlerle birlikte olacaktı. Kendilerinin az önce rahatsızlandığı bilgisine ulaştık ve kendisi danışmanını yönlendirdi bu sunumun gerçekleşmesi üzerine. Aynı zamanda İstanbul Finans Zirvesi'nin danışma kurulu üyesi olan Şehzat Abedi bizlerle birlikte ve Sayın Bakan'ın konuşmalarını kendileri gerçekleştirecekler. İstanbul Finans Zirvesi Danışma Kurulu üyesi Sayın Şehzat Abedi'yi sahneye davet ediyoruz. May I invite please dear Şehzat Abedi. Welcome.
Great, sorry, just checking. Good morning. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Shahid Malik, ex-minister of foreign minister of the UK, was not able to attend today. Unfortunately, he's unwell. I spoke to him yesterday. He sends many regards to all here and wishes he could have been here. My dear honoured guests, speakers, and ladies and gentlemen. So my name is Shehzad Abedi. I'm a British, I live in Britain, though I have lived in Turkey for some time as well. And my background is, I'm a graduate in physics from London University. And soon after that, I got into commodities trading. I worked in a bank in London called Bankers Trust, where I was in commodities there. And then later I spent time in a variety of energy companies, including the illustrious Enron, where I was employee number 121. Throughout this time, I've seen a lot of changes take place in the commodities environment, and hopefully some of that experience is useful. Most recently, I suppose, I've spent a lot of time in Turkey as well, again doing commodities. I was head of commodities for BGC Turkey. BGC is one of the world's largest brokers, and they have an office in Istanbul. And we tried to do business over here, but unfortunately there were a number of different things. The political environment didn't suit BGC, and as such, we still have our operation over here, though it's much reduced now. So I'm trying to think about how to start this talk, and I was reading some interesting things yesterday. So first of all, may I wish you all well. Today is the 10th of Muharram. It's the day of Ashura. And we're told that a number of phenomenal things happened on this day, and we're to be reminded of those things. It's said that Moses saved the children of Israel on this day, and the Pharaoh's armies drowned. So it's a historical event there. And they say, and we were also told that the Ark of Noah rested on Mount Judi, which is in the south of Turkey, on this day as well. Moses fasted on this day. Noah, we're told, also fasted on this day. Why is that interesting? Yesterday, I was reading about the Black Sea and how does it link. The Black Sea is a very interesting sea. We're told about 20 years ago they discovered about 12 miles out from the coast of Turkey that there were farmers and inhabitants who lived in a great basin that was the Black Sea. In the middle of the Black Sea, there was a freshwater lake, which was fed by rivers that had fed in from outside. After the last ice age, and a great flood took place, and maybe an earthquake that that created the Bosphorus, and huge amounts of water, trillions of gallons of water, flooded in. I read in the account that the basin of the Black Sea filled with salt water a mile a day, widening out a mile a day. And the people who live there now are now at the bottom. They found artifacts from them in dwellings, etc. But the reason that it was all preserved is the bottom of the Black Sea is very saline. And there's barely any oxygen there, so they were able to see this. But it gave us a chance to look at the past. And so it is now with international relations that people of the future will probably look at the way things are here. The current environment is certainly uncertain and volatile, but it's also unprecedented. Stock markets in the US and in the UK are reaching record levels. Interest rates in those currencies are also at record low levels. Inflation is low. Joblessness is low. I've just come back, as I say, I live in London, and they've announced yet more reductions in the joblessness level. And yet, there is very little growth. The demographics of these countries, particularly in Europe, is accelerating towards very few young people and an upside-down bell, very few young people and lots of old people for whom the economics don't exist for them to be able to have a pensionable life. We also see that the Eurozone is undergoing great turmoil. Right-wing parties are being voted in, well, we have one in some senses in the UK, but Italy, Spain, Romania, Hungary as well, a very important place. Germany Sweden just voted 18% of their vote has gone to a right-wing party. So this heralds probably a very difficult time for Europe, certainly one that is different from the sort of place that many of the founders of Europe had envisaged. A lot of the reasons that have been given for this have been the arrival of immigrants from outside there. But we also have to look as to why that's happening. We've had almost 2 decades of war taking place in various parts of the Middle East, and tensions rising at sometimes at the beginning of this year, also in Asia. And it's in this environment that we have to look at what's happening for investors and how they can see a way through this. The other forces that are, of course, driving a lot of the change is rapid changes in technology. I think yesterday we had some very interesting talks by people who were talking about the way that data was being gathered on the behavior. It's not just about, of course, it's not just about the gathering of data. It's tying the data together to see what leads to those decisions. Many of the companies have become much more sophisticated at being able to pool data together and to tie the behavior of consumers to using one purchase decision to drive another. And that's allowed companies to grow. We've seen the first, whatever this means, $1 trillion company as Apple, and Amazon, a relatively new company, growing at extremely fast rates with a very different model, also breaking into that. Of course, Amazon remains interesting because it creates not just a US experience, but a global one. read yesterday that Amazon are looking to open up in Turkey fairly soon. So Turkey should also see some of that arrive. I think the difficulty for international investors is obviously to try and create returns in the medium and long term for their own investors. In these environments, it of course becomes very difficult for us to be able to do so because the decision-making process is often jarred by uncertain events that take place around us. While I was here 2 years ago, I had 2 elections, a referendum, a number of terrorist attacks, a coup attempt, and that's just in Turkey. Syria has been going through a very difficult phase, of course, as we know at the moment, and continues to go so. Iran as well, we had the possibility of a nuclear deal with them, which seems to be all but scuppered. All of this leaves us with few places to go, and then so what will tend to happen is that capital will often, low-cost capital will often go back to where it feels it'll get at least some sort of guaranteed return, even though that return is low. And often what that will lead to, unfortunately for international investors, is potential falls, significant falls in emerging markets. The ones that we've seen recently in Turkey and Venezuela may be particular, but we've also seen several others, Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, etc., also beginning to see withdrawals of investment, difficulty in terms of raising some of that dollar indexed or euro indexed funding, which all leads to a different dynamics. Where things seem to be going slightly differently, and maybe it will take at least a decade or 2 again to work out if we don't get hit by another financial crisis as we saw in 2008, is the arrival of China. When I was young, China was seen as a very poor country with a lot of problems, population problems, as well as an inability to really generate anything new. No products were seen that came out of China that were of any quality. Now we find that China, within 20, 30 years, has transformed itself and is looking to extend its reach beyond its shores into other areas. Let me give you the example of a place. There's a city called, or a town that was called Gwadar. It's on the coast of Pakistan. And after my university, my wife and I, we went to the north of Pakistan, which borders China next to Xinjiang province. And the Chinese had built a road at that time called the Karakoram Highway. It used to be part of the Silk Road, as people used to go there. There's a pass at 16,000 feet called the Khunjerab Pass, where traders used to go from Asia into northwestern China. And a century ago, the Xinjiang province was an area of the great game. The Russians were there, the Chinese were there. If you go to that area of China, you will see the embassies of the UK, of France, of all these places vying for power out there. But they built this road. The road comes from Khunjerab and runs all the way down into, goes as far as Rawalpindi in Pakistan. And the Chinese have been helping a great deal to build further roads that would take Chinese products all the way down to Karachi, which is the main port in Pakistan. Pakistan is a very new country. It was formed in 1947. And after the British left, and India was then divided into Pakistan, East Pakistan, and India. And Pakistan, in the 1960s, there was still a part of Pakistan that was owned by Oman, and it was this area called Gwadar. Gwadar became a small fishing village in Balochistan, and in 1960, the Pakistanis bought Gwadar from the Omanis, so it became Pakistani territory. It still remained relatively in the doldrums, nothing much going over there. But it has a natural harbor. It's quite deep, able to take, well, it is now, but it was able to take up to 250,000 ton shipments. And the Chinese are now building a city there. I'm not sure how, I mean, there's a new president, a new prime minister in Pakistan, Imran Khan, and I'm not quite sure as to how his policies will develop. But the Chinese have a plan to build a new city where possibly even Pakistanis will have to take their passports to get into. It will allow Chinese companies to set up manufacturing, employment, and development facilities inside Pakistan and give them access all the way into that part of the Indian Ocean, of course, the coast of Africa, and they've done this in 10 years. Like many of their other cities, like Shenzhen, etc., which have developed into high-rise blocks from tiny villages. A similar thing is happening in Gwadar, and in a very different structure. The Chinese have also signed up a number of deals with other countries. In Ceylon, Sri Lanka, for example, they had lent money, and the money was incapable of the Ceylonese, the Sri Lankans weren't able to pay back that money, so they gave China a 99-year lease on a huge port there as well. And so it comes that these sorts of developments and growth that we see taking place now may take another decade to develop, and gives us as international investors, private international investors, difficulties in terms of being able to form a proper policy as to how we should go forward. Of course, with these long-term goals that the Chinese are playing, possibly even some of the games that the Russians are beginning to play with their new areas out there, it behoves a country like Turkey to be able to find its path as to how it's going to develop within this. Of course, the fascinating thing about Turkey is that it has a large, educated population who have shown their ability to design, manufacture, and to innovate. They have produced remarkably good growth. In some senses, they're a mini China. I visited Mogadishu about a year ago and saw Turkish schools, Turkish roads, Turkish port, the airport, and other places around Somalia that were being developed by Turkish companies. And they had done this remarkably quickly. They'd done it in a very orderly fashion. The airport is, though it's not huge, it's able to take landing customers. It gives proper customs approvals to people who arrive. The people who are using the airport use it very, very well. And we're able to, and the people of Mogadishu are able to travel around, though of course things are still difficult there, are able to travel around in a very different way. The port's doing very well, and the schools are as well. This may give us a route as to how we as international investors would like to look at how we can develop things in Turkey, to partner with Turkish companies to help them expand and invest in countries which need their expertise, the expertise which they've picked up in developing a new airport over here, roads over here, a metro system over here as well. Electrification that's generated new areas as well. And now we see the developing renewables area. I've noticed that an electricity company in Turkey is putting $535 million into new solar and wind generation as well. So there are plenty of opportunities, we think, within Turkey, but it's best for us to partner with Turkish companies who are looking for routes into the developing areas of Asia, but in particular, of course, Africa, where Turks are well received. I hope that my stand-in for Shahid has gone down well, and I apologize once again for Shahid not being able to be here, and I thank you very much for bearing with me while I gave my talk.
Thank you very much.